and welcome to another episode of All Things Conflict with me, your host, Maria Arpa. And in today's episode, I'm really moved and touched to bring Kerry Moore. Kerry is the founder of a charity called Truly Seen, Truly Heard. She's a care experienced healer, mentor, a light in a very dark side of our humanity. We talk very deeply about her challenges and experiences through childhood and how those experiences affected her throughout her life until she was able to find the healing that was able to transform her. So let's jump into the conversation. I think you're going to find it very touching. So, Kerry, welcome to this episode of All Things Conflict. We haven't known each other very long, but we did have an amazing conversation. What happened was I'd done a really enlightening episode with someone called John Wedger, who opens up a whole area around child abuse, child sexual exploitation. And I felt very curious and moved to really look at, the effects that happen, what happens to those children when they grow up. And then, just as luck would have it, a post on LinkedIn popped up around the care experienced and care leavers' experiences. And I reached out to you. I was absolutely touched and moved to talk to you and the work that you do to put things out in the world. So here we are, and maybe you could just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, so I'm care experienced. So I'm a mature care experienced. So I'm 40. How old am I? Yeah, 46. I had to think then. And yeah, I've gone through quite a challenge in my life. And so everything I do is to raise awareness about the circumstances that those who are care experienced have to navigate in life. Quite a lot of care experience sadly end up in the justice system. And I was able to meet with a chaplain over at one of our local prisons at Altcourse, where he shared that what he is seeing is that there's a lot that experience adverse childhood experiences or our care experience. So everything I do is rooted in trying to change the narrative about the outcomes that care experienced have. So since I left the care system, the narratives haven't changed. So a lot of care experience have negative outcomes, and that's not through no fault of their own. I just feel that the systems can't support us in the way that we need. So 90% of those care experience sadly end up with negative narratives, either in the justice system, or 40% end up with their own children entering the care system, and 25% end up homeless. But I think that research is quite outdated as well. I've never seen it change. I don't know where it originally came from, but it's something that the care experience community are very familiar with the statistics. But we know within our community that sadly, there's many care experience that reach the point that they no longer want to be here because of what they're carrying in life.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's big. So there's several things that you've highlighted, and the first is that the narrative hasn't changed. You're in your 40s. Nothing really has changed from your experiences to what current young people leaving the care system are experiencing. That there are traumas that there seems to be no healing for, and that the systems don't seem to be able to bend or understand or widen the availability. And so therefore, through no fault of their own, because we're talking about children essentially, go through and experience certain, horrible stuff. And we can get into that horrible stuff and not scared of it or scared to speak it. And then those traumas and those scars where there's not really suitable places for healing, lead to really negative outcomes in life, to the point where people who didn't want to be here anymore and took their own lives, because there's no hope.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was a little bit about my journey. So I experienced adverse childhood experiences from my birth mum, and then my dad and stepmom brought me up. But sadly, there was experiences within that I didn't fully understand until I became a mum. But sadly, it meant that I ended up in the care system at 12, specifically residential care. And I just wasn't ready. I was one of the most probably unstreetwise child you could think of. I remember rocking up into the community, into the dining area where all the children were and staff. So they always sat down to have communal meals. And I rocked up with a little suitcase and a Minnie Mouse mint tracksuit because I wasn't a street. Do you know? And I didn't realise when I walked in that space how vulnerable I was. Sadly, and this isn't in isolation. Many children who enter the care system, whether that's through residential care, foster care, adoption or kinship, sadly, the systems can cause additional layers of trauma. And that is certainly what I experienced within the care system. I had my bedroom set on fire on one occasion. And my first experience was being forced into a sex act. And when I reported it to the staff, they were like, well, it's your word against his. So I didn't feel supported. So it was a difficult journey to be in. And obviously, residential care, they've paid to care, but you get different staff, so you don't get that continuity. And there's staff that, for whatever reason, they just don't connect with you, and you can feel that, for some reason they don't enter into conversations, and it's nothing any one person has done, but obviously as a young person that can feel really difficult in that process. So it was a difficult journey to be in, and sadly my own children entered the care system because I reached a point where I didn't want to be here. I felt I didn't have any worth. I didn't have any value. I didn't feel like I had any purpose, because everything I have gone through in life has just felt like a battle, fight, family courts. I was victim in a domestically abusive relationship, which should have been raised as a safeguarding concern, because I was 17 and he was 21 years older than me. No one ever raised anything. No one ever protected me. And what I experienced, isn't in isolation. There's so many of us that go through similar experiences, or, because we are vulnerable and society recognises our vulnerability. So I can guarantee those who, sadly experienced the circumstances in Manchester, the homes would have been targeted because they recognised the vulnerability, and the staff only have so much limited control to be able to do anything. And sometimes it feels like you don't really care either, sadly.
So you went from, your birth mother, your mother, into your father and step parent, and that didn't work. So you were sort of born into really difficult circumstances, and then found yourself being shipped off to residential care at 12. And I'm telling myself that even though what went before was horrible, you were at least expecting it not to be worse. At least expecting that, although no matter how wretched it is, that you might have had some, as childish hope that that you were going to be safe at least. And within a short space of time, your room's set fire to, and you're forced into a sexual act with a male worker, and told it's your word against his. So so we can't take any action or do anything. And then what you discover is what a lonely place this really is. So not only are you not getting any encouragement, support, validation, because you've got, corporate parents, if you like, who are just people doing a job on shift. You're also in this incredibly unsafe place. And of course, we don't know that we're vulnerable, do we? We don't know that that's the state we're in, and that actually, and there's nothing to fall back on. So therefore, you grow up, you come out, and I think it's one thing that you mentioned in our conversation last time that really struck me is, you come out of the care system and you're on your own. There isn't any family members to say, don't do that, go there. No matter how brutally or, compassionately, there isn't anyone to say, this is craziness or whatever. And you found yourself not wanting to be here. And then your own children ended up in the care system. And the point here is that what you're describing isn't unusual. That's the point. You're not here saying, hey, look at me, my unusual, tragic story. You're saying, this is the norm. And the research is so old. The research, you don't even know that it's the same statistics and the same numbers. So where is this research from?
And I think what happened, so just for clarity as well, it wasn't a staff member, it was another a gang member.
Right, okay.
That did that, But you're absolutely right. I don't think there's any research that shows the outcomes beyond 30. And that just reaffirms the narrative that we heard about ourselves, that we don't matter. When you come out of the system and you're placed in a flat, you're given a pocket of money to set you up with your essentials. But no, I didn't realise I could access any support. No one tried to contact me. I was contacted once because at the time, the local authority that I was in were doing like a kind of reinvention of the wheel of what support would be, and I got to meet Neil Morrissey, and David Beckham came to the launch, and other Man United players. So he was very young, obviously, in his career then. But after that, I didn't know I could access any support. And I was put in a flat near Trafford. I had to flee for my life because another resident was coming at me to attack me with a fire extinguisher. I can boldly say I've never, ever been in a fight, never been involved in confrontation, because it's just not within my nature. I've always, tried to stay away from it because I'm quite sensitive emotionally. Fled for my life and put in a flat without kind of any skills. I wasn't given any budgeting support. I wasn't given any kind of employment support, how to navigate being in a flat and budget, allow for your food, allow for electricity, allow for travel costs, all those kind of things that you would need to navigate an independent life, especially at that age where, if you had children, they probably wouldn't go on to living independently until they've got a pocket of money to be able to set them up on the first home. So, you've not got the kind of skills
and no model either, no model for it, not even that you could remember. you know, like I grew up in poverty, and I remember my mum sometimes having to put groceries back and thinking, oh, right, you know, there's something you have to learn there, you know, about resources. So just no model for it, no handbook, no one to guide you, no information. Um, and then if I've got the chronology correct, then of course you then met someone and went into a abusive relationship who was a lot older than you, and that should have been a safeguarding concern, of course. You're 17 and he's, you know, however old.
Yeah,
And
so he was 21 years my senior, and no one obviously said anything. Obviously, he was well known within the community. He'd had previous relationships and, you know, quite a lot of children within that relationship. So he was well known within the community, but no one ever, you know, even then tried to protect me within the community. So I had to quickly flee my flat because I put someone up who was care experienced in my flat. I was working in a nursery, and sadly it didn't work, and I asked him to leave. And when I came home from work one day, he'd literally trashed my flat, you know, just got hot chocolate and grinded it into my carpets, just totally destroyed what little piece of sanctuary I could call my own at that time. So yeah, it was a difficult journey. And then navigating, because sadly that relationship was abusive. Not so much physically so, but, you know,
yeah,
I was asking him if I could spend money.
yeah, coercive control, yeah. Which, of course, back then wouldn't have even been a thing because that's very recent, isn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't anything there, and the emotional. So every time he would say, you met me with nothing. When I met you, you had a black and white TV, which I did, and some clothes. And he would regularly throw that back into my face. So you become reliant on that person. You think, oh, yeah, well, I am. Yeah, but like you said, the family courts at that point didn't know anything about coercive control. So I battled through family courts, private family court. This would have been multiple times to try and stop my children from seeing him when I became separated. As with most domestic abuse victims, sadly, we end up going back. So I would get non-molestation orders. I would make the decision not to be in that relationship. But even though I had the non-molestation orders, the abuse would be more significant emotionally, that it was just easier to go back. So I ended up going back multiple times. But the family courts never supported me. They scrutinised me when I tried to stop him from having contact with his children because there was safeguarding concerns. And social care have pretty much been involved in my life through the children for a long time as well. And it just gets tiring because no one, you know, everyone scrutinizes you, everyone passes judgment on you. I was labeled as a lazy parent because what I recognize, I always wanted to be a parent that was everything I wanted in the world, even as a teenager. And I think that was because I recognized that I had so much love to give, that being a mum, you know, but I made a decision that I didn't want to use physical chastisement because of the experiences I had. So I think we make a conscious decision. We're not going to be that parent. But then professionals come in and say, well, you're a lazy parent, you're neglectful, you're this, and this. And it just reaffirms those negative narratives that we already hold about ourselves. Because when we go into the care system, it feels like rejection. And sometimes that rejection just feels like it's always constantly being reaffirmed. And what I found is that through the battles through family courts, they never ever ordered an alcohol screening test on the dad, even though I was saying he's an alcoholic. Never ever did they order that. So that, you know, in terms of like feeling let down by the system, that's one of the things that I felt let down for, and me being scrutinized. But also as well, it's just so tiring fighting the systems. And your nervous system is already unregulated through the trauma you experience. But sadly, the mental health therapies that you're offered, they're normally talking therapies like psychotherapy, psychiatry, counselling. I had probably every kind of therapy you can think of, but sadly I still struggled with this suicidal ideation because it wasn't getting to the root cause of the trauma. It wasn't helping me release the trauma from my body. I was still carrying that and fighting systems.
Yeah, so you're abandoned. You use the word rejection, as early rejection, and then of course you experience the world through that lens, and then there's no support, and then worse, than you're under scrutiny. And so instead of a system saying, actually, this person's really vulnerable, and what we need to do is be really mindful about who is moving in on this person, it says, no, let's scrutinize them. Let's scrutinize them. Let's check where they are, because clearly something's wrong with them, and we need to, and so sadly, what you're describing, again, I'm going to highlight, is not unusual. It's not like you were unlucky. For me, with the reading I've done and meeting people in your position and stories that I've heard from other sources, this is a systemic issue. It happens to impact you and others, but it's manufactured. Does that make sense? There's a whole lot of things working to produce this result, and it's really hard to get the system to see it produces this result. So, of course, now you've set up a charity, Be Seen and Be Heard. Is that truly seen, truly heard?
Yes. Be seen, be heard, and then felt that was taken through Companies House. So yeah, truly seen, truly heard. So I'm just in the process of registering that with Companies House, but I've been working on it for probably about a year now. I thought it was about 9 months, and then it came up on my calendar like a year ago. I started like doing networking, attending events, started really kind of speaking about my experiences, because I speak about my experiences in the hope that it will inspire and empower other people who have navigated it. So, thankfully, for some, I showed a strength and resilience. So I think that is something that many care experienced have, is strength and resilience. They might not recognise it, but they are able to overcome those challenges. It might take a period of time. So my last mental health inpatient stay, so it wasn't through sections. Thankfully, I was never sectioned. It was a voluntary inpatient stay. And that is when I came out of that stay, I had 2 decisions at that point consciously, whether I was going to carry on through this self-destruction, kind of repeatedly choosing abusive relationships, and probably go into unhealthy coping mechanisms, or I could metaphorically and quite literally dig my heels in and really look at the trauma that I'd experienced, go through a healing and recovery journey, and get my children back, which I thankfully did. It's not been easy.
Wow.
So that's, I hope that, because 40% of us lose our children, and that's because the support that we're offered isn't trauma informed, it isn't nurturing, it isn't supportive, it's judgmental, it's scrutiny, and it's destructive to us as a people. We're not, what we get, obviously. I got to a point where I didn't want to be here, and obviously it impacted my children. But the family, the system accused me of emotionally abusing my children because I got to that point, and I was like, I I haven't emotionally abused him. I've just got to a point where I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm broken. I felt broken. I felt tired. I felt exhausted. I didn't see any hope with that word. You know, I didn't have any hope in. It's like, if this is what life is, I don't want to be a part of it.
And I think that, you know, whatever way a child ends up experiencing trauma, and, you know, and not having their needs met at critical times in their development, no matter, you know, where that comes from, growing up and becoming an adult and never having been validated, you know, just by the fact of being born, you know, just by the fact of a soul incarnating into this existence, you are a wonderful, you know, expression of life. Never having received that gives you no model or no way to aspire. That I think is a big part of the problem. So you have got nothing in your solar system that you can go, well, look, all of this is crap, but there's that little bit of light. You don't have that.
No, and I feel a big thing that I'm campaigning about at the moment is that it's really difficult if for any reason you've had a period of break in your employment. It's really difficult. The
Yeah.
systems want to keep you stuck in that poverty cycle because while you're stuck in that poverty cycle, you're in that space, aren't you? You're not going to
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
anything in society. You're not going to question systems. You don't feel you have the strength to be able to speak up and
Mm.
question what is happening in the world around us. So I feel in some way, systems want to keep us in that space where we're not improving our social mobility, where we're experiencing poverty, where we feel we don't have much to offer to the world, where we feel loneliness and isolation, all those negative things. You know, when I was struggling with my mental health and felt suicidal, I was told to go for a walk. Like, I don't even want to be here. Why would I even want to feel like I understand the benefits of going for a walk? But you have to understand when someone gets to that point, it's got to be a holistic kind of support, just meeting them where they're at, just showing them. You know, National Care Leavers Month was last year, and previously we've only had a week of being able to celebrate care experience community. Last year was the first time that we had a month celebration, and I was lucky to work with an organisation on doing the marketing for that campaign. And you know what came to my mind and I acknowledge through doing the campaign is that those that were successful in life, so they had a good job, they'd managed, they might have been in leadership roles, was because one person saw them, one
Yes.
person
Yes.
spoke life into them, one
Yes.
person helped them see their potential, their gifts, their talents,
Yes.
and they're successful. The world would want us to believe that we're not successful
Mm.
in life if we're not working for a period of time. You know, all the things. I don't want to sound like a conspiracist, but you know, it's really difficult, and I'm seeing it. I felt it in my spirit the last few months. Like, it feels like every single public funded system is crashing to the ground. You've got the social care that's saying it needs a radical reset. You've got the NHS new neighbourhood model coming into. You've got voluntary community organisations who are trying to get funding and grants to be able to offer vital services, and they're not getting it. So if they cut their services, what's going to happen then? It's just, I attended an event today, and suicide prevention, CIC, so a not-for-profit organisation, is receiving referrals from an NHS body, and they're not getting any monetary, any kind of monetary reward, not reward, but, you know, they're not helping them monetary wise, but they're quick enough to make people refer people onto him. And this is our NHS. What's going on?
No, it's. I mean, that is definitely the resource issue and the lack of resources. You know that, and you said you don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I understand that. But you know, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about the fact that there's no such thing as real money, is there? Because money is just decimal points on a computer. You know, all our gold was sold. So, you know, let's not go there today for a deeper conversation about the fact that you can just manufacture money if you have to. So, you know, governments can manufacture money if they want to. But the what really came up for me, that it's just an idea I had that I just want to see how it lands for you. Is that okay? As you were speaking, I heard you say, you know, that you don't get seen. You know, there's these just negative kind of narratives and all the rest of it, and the systems just don't want to hear, and they're not changing and accommodating. And I thought, well, I wonder whether, you know, children going through a broken and very detrimental care system are the manifestation of everything that's wrong in society, and nobody wants to look in that mirror.
Yeah.
So what happens to you when you hear me put it that way, as a way of looking at it?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because, you know, in times of austerity where parents are struggling, so our generation is known as the latch kids generation. Yeah, because sadly we've had a long period of a cost of living crisis. If you have got two parents in a household, they're probably working, just one job, but they're probably doing like a job and then a side hustle, because so much is the cost of living consequences. But yeah, I think in times like that, parents, so I'm a send parent as well, so I'm a parent carer, and I've had to write complaints to my local authority because they failed my daughter, and the government's wanting to bring send white paper reform. We've got young people not in education, employment and training. You know, why is that? Because they're being forced into an education system that doesn't recognise their gifts and talents. It's a dictatorship. You sit there, you do that, don't want you to move, don't want you to talk. You know, the control.
Oh, don't even start me on the education system. And how I'll put that back to you is, the system can only accommodate, it has a very narrow bandwidth. It can only accommodate certain sort of types. And if you fall outside of that, what's wrong with it is it doesn't honestly say, we can only cope with, and our system was only built to cope with, you know, this very narrow bandwidth. And I'm really sorry, but we just don't know how, and we haven't got the resources. No, what it says is, there's something wrong with you because you're not normal.
And children, there are children who aren't academics. So
that's right.
It amazes me. Exams are only testing their memory recall. It's not testing how intelligent they are. It's testing how they're able to keep information in their mind and be able to bring that through into exams. So there's a whole generation that are being failed. There's families that are broken. So as I've been working on setting up this not-for-profit, I attended a voluntary community faith social enterprise meeting, which was looking at the 6 local authorities that cover the Liverpool City region. And OPSI shared there's 16,000 children on the brink of being placed in care. Now, they shared that, and I tried to seek clarity whether that was just in Liverpool or whether that was within the wider Liverpool City region. Unfortunately, I didn't get clarification over that, but that's a startling figure, isn't it? Like 16,000.
So that takes me to, you know, look, my expectation is that most people watching this podcast will be compassionate, and then there are going to be people who are going to have no compassion whatsoever. Maybe they don't even have compassion for themselves, right? So if I want to move out of a compassionate space with you and say, well, you know, when I hear a number like 16,000 kids on the brink of going into care, the idea that we can't do prevention work, the idea that we can't put the support in is absolute lunacy. It's preposterous, because the ongoing costs, I mean, if I were to take you and say, I'm stripping all compassion out of this, I don't care about you as a human being, don't talk to me, Kerry, I just want to look at what you've cost the system. And then we could go back and see, what would it have taken? What would it have taken to channel your direction in a very different way? And the cost comparison would be ridiculous.
Yeah. And can I tell you something else as well that I learned recently? You know, those who have mental health difficulties, so they're discharged, it costs £6,000 to admit them back in. £6,000 per readmittance. So why aren't we looking at lived experience? Why aren't we looking at peer support? Why aren't we recognising that when someone's walked the same walk, that there's a deeper level of empathy and compassion? But you know why? Because there's the systems will still hold you to your past. They will still restrain you in that past. They still hold those narratives that I got diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder. How degrading is a term is that? A personality disorder. And what I've reframed that is I'm sensitive. I'm a Christian. I've been born again, so I hold the Holy Spirit within me. So when people cry, I feel that in my spirit, because I recognise that God's heart is probably broken at the world that he's seeing right now.
Well, I mean, how can we have... so there's a guy called Thomas Sazaz who wrote a book called The Myth of Mental Illness. And I don't know the statistics, because this has just come to me and I can't remember it exactly. But, you know, it's like if 30 years ago there were 10 mental health conditions, there are now 20,000. We have to ask ourselves some questions about this. You know, people feeling broken, people not being heard, people who have been at the hands of systemic failures do not have mental health conditions. They're people whose emotions have been broken and who haven't been supported in a way. I'm not saying that there aren't medical conditions. Clearly they are. But once you start giving a name and labelling you, it's like, I remember being absolutely horrified when they brought out a teenage disease called oppositional defiance disorder. Well, I mean, that's just a kid being a kid in a system that doesn't care about it. That's all that is. It's a kid who's actually got more than one brain cell going, this school isn't here to support me. It wants to push me through a conveyor belt, and I don't like it. Now, the problem is, if you bring people up with a violent society, then people are going to leak out those frustrations, copying those behaviours.
Yeah, because it's frustration, isn't it? So my daughter got diagnosed with PDA profile, which stands for pathological demand avoidant, and she's so strong-headed. She's probably a leader. I think she'll be a very successful leader. But what she doesn't want to do is she doesn't want to be told to sit down, read that book, write that story. It's because there's more to it than that. And there's a lot more to the young people who are not in education, employment and training, but the part of what the media likes to label them, don't they? So there's a problem here, like the problem is with them. No, the problem is with the systems that wants to restrain them from achieving their greatest potential. What I've recognised is that a lot of those not in education, employment and training are often care experience. So they're in a system where they felt rejection, they don't, they struggle to accept love and all those things, but also they're probably neurodivergent because their minds are very creative. They've got entrepreneurial skills. So why aren't we then? So then when we come out the education system, we're trying to put them into an employment where they're going to be told what to do. So it's another system where we're trying to control people. We're not.
So it's not about people being neurodivergent. That's just people being people. That's just people being human, right? What it is about rigid systems that cannot accommodate the span and spectrum of our humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on with that. And it's a shame, isn't it? It's crushing because we're crushing these people, these young people. Do you know what I mean? And I came across this term called hikikomori. So it's a Japanese term and it's in the 1990s. And it's those that people who choose social isolation. And there's a lot of young people who are choosing that way of life because for that, then there's safety in that space because they've already developed this narrative that these systems.
So I was, and the way I look at that, sorry to cut you, but the way I look at that is I think that the main education that we need to provide to everyday person that's struggling to get through life. See, every single person needs empathy. Empathy is a huge need. What we need to educate each other is that no system is ever going to give you empathy. So we have to figure out how to come together. And that's what you're doing basically in your non-profit. It's what I do. It's what those of us that have experienced something. We're saying we've got to come together and we've got to provide each other with empathy. And we need to treat the systems as, unempathic, has no capacity, because those systems don't even offer empathy to their staff, right? You've got people working on minimum wage and very low wages and not giving them the resources to do the job. So your average sort of teacher, social worker, nurse, they're not receiving any empathy. So there's none to give. And it's about just being able to go, okay, well, that system's how do I maximize the way I use that system and expect no empathy, because I'm going to get my empathy within my locality, within my tribe, within my community. And that's how I see us being able to change things. I wonder how you respond to that.
Absolutely. I think that's a key thing, empathy and compassion. That's one of the quotes I use for empathy is one of the greatest gifts one person can give another. But when that's rooted in lived experience, that empathy is felt a lot deeper because you understand. So I will offer a greater empathy to someone who has felt suicidal because I know what that feels like to feel like that. I definitely think, definitely feel there's like a crashing down of all these systems that haven't put people at the forefront of their service, and that there's going to be people who do offer that empathy, that are able to come up and walk beside these people and help them see. So that's part of what the Be Me program is. So what I identified is that the mental health services I had didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. And, I had 2 mental health inpatient stays, even though I'd accessed those mental health interventions. So when I became a born again Christian, someone spoke about spoke a prophetic word of a rose and that the dead petals would fall to the ground. So the program I've created is based on that, and it's releasing the trauma that people hold in their bodies. So domestic abuse victims will still hold those negative words that the perpetrator's spoken over them many years, even probably I'd say for the rest of their lives, because it becomes part of their imprint of what they've navigated in their day-to-day life. So they hold these negative narratives long after they've escaped from the abusive relationship. So this program helps people to release any negative narratives that they hold about themselves, and that can be as a result of abuse or trauma or the care system, but also the education system, you know, that they leave school with these negative narratives, and just creating a multi-sensory experience. So using meditation, creativity, and showing kindness, helping each person who, you know, goes on the program to realize their potential, and that they can dream big, because there's nothing holding them back now. Once they've released those negative narratives, there's nothing holding them back from being able to achieve anything they want to achieve in life. I'm a great believer anybody can achieve anything they want in life if they have the right people around them. Absolutely. That's the key thing. You can't do it on your own unless you've got a whole host of energy and stuff, but having the right people around you, you can achieve anything you want in life.
I think that's really important. And, you know, Kerry, I could probably talk to you for another hour, but we're coming to the end of our time together for this episode. I think the message, you know, you've been through a lot, you know, there's no doubt. And because it started in childhood, you know, there's no way to say, well, it's your fault, you know, you shouldn't have done this or you shouldn't have done that. You know, we can't point any fingers at you. And some of the things that have happened to you in adulthood were as a direct result of a lack of support, education, awareness, you know, whatever. But the one thing that comes and sings really clearly from listening to you is our amazing ability as humans to heal. It's never too late to begin the healing process. And that's what I'm seeing you as, is a beacon of, you know, the wounded healer. I feel that in some ways many of us are wounded healers. Using your experiences as an opportunity to heal and to be a light to others, to say, actually, there are things we can do just to make things a little better, one step at a time. It's been an absolute honour to talk to you. I do hope you'll come back and talk to me some more, and we can talk more about your charity as it gets off the ground. Yeah. But if you've got one final thing that you would love to leave us with, what would that be?
Don't be defined by your past. Believe in yourself and hope. Never give up hope. Better days will come, but choose the right people to support you in that process.
Right, very wise. And if someone wanted to find you, how could they look you up? Or
so I can I'm primarily, I am on across all socials, but because I'm focusing more on the business, probably LinkedIn is probably the best way to contact me. So that's just Kerry Moore. And then if people want to contact me as well, WhatsApp is my preferred method of contact. I don't know whether you have the facility to be able to share my number, Maria, when it goes out, or...
Okay, well, thank you for doing this. It's been lovely, and I do hope that we will get to know each other better, and you know, who knows what we'll put out in the world.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for seeing me and giving me the opportunity to come on. Appreciate it.
Much love. Take care.